Hi everyone, and welcome to week 4 of Advanced Digital Web. I'm going to go ahead and go through the content for the week and get you comfortable with what we're doing. I'm still working on getting some feedback to you guys about the About Me pages. Apologies, that's taking me a little longer than expected, but I do usually try to rewrite at least one or two things that you guys give me weekly as far as content if I can. Okay, let's go ahead and dive in. So this week we're going back to talking more about navigation techniques. So we're talking about user experience and user interface in web design. Okay, so we're also going to be exploring some built-in tools that WordPress has available. It's called plugins. They are not mandatory to use. I find that, at least like 50% of you guys might try to use them in your site. And if they become too complicated for you and it's not something that works out for you, it's definitely not going to impact your final grade. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at the week 4 introduction. So some of the things that we're doing, we mentioned user experience and best practices. We're talking about plugins, and then we're going back to the design of your page layouts. And you can read through the module overview on your own time. As far as the resources, again, please make sure you go through all the resources for the week before you do any of the coursework. I mean, it's really going to help, especially this week with the discussions. The main project that we're working on this week is the discussions about user interface. So you have a good video here on what are the differences, talking about basics of design principles. So for those of you that might not be design majors, I know I have one or two in this course that are taking it as kind of like an advanced elective. That goes back to some of the things that you might not have gotten if you haven't had core graphic design classes. Talking more about custom header images as we continue to move forward with your themes. Talking about how to resize them and things like that, editing your pages, how to use the block editor in WordPress, so changing your text and things like that. Talking about activating plugins. Like I said, this is a big week for plugins and kind of exploring if you think you want to use any of that. I think most people end up using a plugin for their contact forms. If you don't want to use the default, there's some nice ones out there. Let's see, going on down. Another design principles one on hierarchy and color. And then the additional support is on, I'll talk specifically, custom menus are great to know how to do, and then, web design basics, learning the basics. So going back to those of you that might need a little bit more brush up on code. So the additional supports are always great if you have time to go through them. I'm also going to post this in the announcements. If you don't use Reddit, there's a really good subreddit for WordPress. If you run into anything, especially if you're working in the evenings, there's almost someone online all the time that can answer your questions. I know there's always me, and then there's the help section, but there's also subreddits where you can get professional help as well. So I specifically am going to post not only the regular subreddit for WordPress, but also the plugins installation one. And it talks a little bit more from a perspective of a professional. I know I already had one or two people ask me about Elementor Pro and why it doesn't work with Campus Press. It just doesn't. It's just because of the school contracts and everything. So there are certain things that won't always work with the Campus Press view just because of the deal we have with them. So if you're running into any issues there, that could also be a problem. And if you're not specifically working with the WordPress .org versus the Campus view. So if you want something more customizable and like completely custom and not like a really basic template, oftentimes you will have to use, just the WordPress through the WordPress site, not the Campus view. It's also good because eventually you'll lose your Campus view site because you won't have your student email. So those are things to consider, while we're finishing up. There's also a really good one on how to install plugins without the business plan. So I am linking this as well just because of the dialogue. They go back and forth and it's actually really informative. So I'm going to give you that one as well. Okay, so for this week, we are doing a discussion on the UX UI. So this is where I changed the course up a little bit. So we're talking about design principles and best practices. Of course, read these 2 articles before you attack them. And let's see. So it wants this week for you guys to talk in Explaining the role of UX and UI design and web design. Describe at least 2 of the design principles or best practices that you think play an essential role in a website's effectiveness. Now, this wants you to go back to your original posting of the site that you posted, I think in week 1. I'm open to a new site. Like, you do not have to use the original site that you posted and dive back in and dissect it with this. Again, if you want to use a completely different website, you can do that as well. And then, of course, you post that by Thursday with your initial post. And then you have until the end of the week to do 2 peer responses with these specifics. Again, you can read through those. So the activity this week is you are going to be writing your, let's finish up. So we already started working a little bit with mission statements and stuff, but we're going to be working now more with finishing up your home and about me pages. So you could read through the rubric on this. Find this one's actually a little bit easier than working with mission statements. But those are the contents that we're working in for the week, and I hope you all have a fantastic weekend.